1.
I've made some tapes like this before where I'm thinking out loud of what I'm doing in various phases of picture editing, and people seem to find these useful. And I think this is a pretty fascinating project. And the most valuable part of it all comes about with something that I do pretty privately. Sitting here in the evening,
2.
going through these pictures, putting them together. Now,
3.
what I'm doing is associating pictures of my own,
4.
which I call magic calligraphy, in pairs with other clippings
5.
and pictures I excerpt out of magazines and newspapers and so on, according to what kinds of
6.
energies and actions and emotions and
7.
movements and all are in this calligraphy that I speak of. This will
8.
presumably clarify what I mean with magic and what I mean with calligraphy as I go on.
9.
But I think it's important, as a matter of record, to do this unrehearsed when I'm working on an actual case, which takes quite a while.
10.
The essential here photographically is that I am interested in things to do with pictures after they're made. And I like to have another stage over and beyond the
11.
making of a picture. First I make the picture, which in this case is almost the minor part of it, because what I'm after is to have the picture to do the later part. First I make a picture. Then out of the pictures that I've made, I get pairs that I think
12.
go together. And then I make a kind of layout, usually 4 pictures, 5 pictures, 2 of mine combined with other things which make a third single unit, a kind of orchestration of these elements.
13.
Now here it goes. Now this is unrehearsed. I haven't been looking at these pictures trying to figure out what I'm going to do at all. This is the stage where I figure it out. This is unusual only in one respect, that I did set aside one picture, which I think may go with these because I happened to come across it, something clicked in my mind. But I have a whole pile of things that I've already torn out of magazines and all, and I'm going to go through this whole pile, but not putting aside things that I think are pertinent, but I'm not going to photograph each one, you know. I talk on the tape, and I'll leave out a lot of the spaces where I'm just going through things. But there are things I'll say about what seems pertinent and what doesn't. And I'll have quite a lot to say about pertinence. Now, I'm not after the thing which is the most obvious connection, of course. I'm interested in the thing which is the furthest reaching out that I can go that will still stand up. The furthest out that will still stand. It's personal things. Of interest to others, yes. People have looked at these things and they see. And they're interested. They're more interested in this end procedure, this association, than they are in the pictures themselves. Now,
14.
This one I already put aside. It is, you can't see very well probably in the detail, but it is a group of hands holding a certain kind of cutlery. It's an advertisement for some cutlery. And it is a lot of hands put together. And this I'm going to set aside, you see, up here, as possibly pertinent. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the kinds of things that are in this pile, and what I'm after is what rings a bell as it goes along. And this bell may be very different. Here's some articles of furniture
15.
And a European city, some faces that I often use. These are scratchy type faces of some intensity. I often put in here faces to cast a character into whatever dramatic form there is. Then here there are some in this pile that I've set aside I want to use. Here's an abacus, and also with it I have thought to use a picture of some eggs. But I haven't got the picture for this yet. This would be. And a few of these I'm saving because I know I want to use them. Women's shoes, fashion ads, typography, vague buildings. See, mood things like this. Bits of architectural stuff. Even
16,
some news pictures too that fit in sometimes. Not as news, but as a kind of thing that is occurring. Different types of human relationships. I'm trying to sense here the mood. I think
17,
I somehow think I'll put that one aside. Put aside means consider a little later on. Reproduction from
18.
Rembrandt, for instance, which has nothing to do with it. Blurred action shots from sport events, westerns, stage settings, modern hotels, large
19.
faces, which are usually out of scale for this purpose.
20,
Things out of mythology. All I'm talking about now is the whole variety. Sooner or later I'll do one that is all about sleep, and this will be
21.
with different kind of beds. See? Sooner or later, not here. I haven't struck very much that actually fits. Also, line drawings,
22.
cuts and things. Here are some herbs, you see, out of. I will sometime use these three, you see, in one picture. And I'm after what are the bits,
23,
maybe bits of violence.
24,
Types of social occasions. I'm not getting an awful lot yet that fits in with my feeling for this, which I don't have predetermined. I want to emphasize that. I'm feeling my way. Different types of people in all kinds
25.
of different clothes and situations, details which
26,
this kind of fireplace grate like this, which well, you see here, I will put this aside because of the movement nature of this thing. You see, it is not about fire, but if you take the heat out of fire, take the circumstance out of fire, take the physics, the association out of fire, and there remains the motion, the flicker of the fire. There is something of that in here.
27,
Some fine day I will have the presidents of the United States. See? Now I'm not going to put all these things that I might have. I'll go through here. I'm looking for things that click and trying to pay attention. But I'm trying to show here the variety of considerations that come up, although they don't have anything to do with this particular case. But here you see
28.
with different types of individuals, how one is aggressive, while another is very pacific. Fashion things, pieces of machinery, enterprises here, that I want to use sometime. Things out of the jungle, people talking, sometimes versions of works of art, strange animals out of the zoo, bits out of mythology and so-called ethnic arts, Maya sculpture, things from urban life, as we know, the stress and daily routine of office practice. A thing like that is
29.
in there just for the possible topography. I like this soldier woman, and I'm going to use her sometime. And small, that's typography. A concert hall. Where I could get them works of art, I wish I had a whole lot more. Oh, there are the eggs. Glass, decorative Swedish crystal animals, chairs. For instance, sometimes things are paired with, I can work something out with contrasts of this type. Yeah. I don't seem to find too much here that has to do with, I don't see that this has much to do with it, but something clicks here.
31.
With this girl writing. Is an energy. I'm gradually looking for what is a kind of energy in these branches. And what is a kind energy in a still picture is not stilled, but it is wound up. It's like, so many of these things are like a coiled spring. It is wound up like a piece of clockwork machinery that contains the power to go, like a child's toy that you wind up and goes. It isn't that this has energy and movement because we happen to know about riding horses on the beach, and that this is therefore a movement and this is not. This is movement with a shadow that goes across it. This is movement with a relation of interparts here, and it doesn't take a great deal of imagination to translate this indeed into running, rushing mythological creatures, horses or parts of a Japanese army in those funny martial armor that they wear. I'm going to put that aside. And grapes and oriental sculpture, and that is here for this strange piece of sculpture. I have somehow, I'm putting aside things, if anything clicks. Wait, out. I'm going to put that one aside. I tend to put in quite a number of things of decorative arts into this pile. People hiking, more beds, somewhat unusual aspect of a telephone, timepieces. Sometimes it is only for some little bit of the thing here. Or details from interiors of various kinds. These are of extraordinary elegance.
34.
This is not here for the figures in the foreground, but for this. Sometimes with lettering in, not instruments, decorative arts, there are different types of light. This is here for this one down here. This
35.
This fella, he haunts me for some reason. This picture, not a very important picture, but I'm going to do something with that picture. For some reason, it isn't exactly that I like it. It's for some reason that it makes a great impression on me, this thing. There's a lot of these pictures containing a picture don't bowl me over at all as a gimmick, but there is something about where this fella is that fascinates me. I have quite a lot of women in here, and chess game, things taken out of commercial catalogs, traveling, soldier figurines, girls in the shower, heraldry, dark, rather romantic, almost ferocious landscapes. That side of fashion photography where they're having all kind of extraordinary fun. The clothes I have now lend themselves to this. Elegant furs, parts of machinery. Figures, this is another photograph, which among this pile, which of course I've been through many times now, haunts me in some way. There is something about that extraordinary silhouette. These guys you don't see anymore. I don't know when this is made. 1924. Okay, it's in London. You do see toppers in London. But the picture haunts me somehow. There's something about the frame-filling nature of the silhouette. It's extraordinary purposefulness. Details of Statue of Liberty and his faces here. No, sometime I'm
36.
going to use her. I don't know, I better keep that out. There's another one
37.
that fascinates me. This guy going out the door. The kind of picture I'm rather fond of. I'm going to find a good use for that. That has something to do with magic, I think. I'll talk more about where and what this magic is. It has something to do with that coat hanging there, being the person, you see. Let me see. Cartoons sometimes, crossword puzzles, tennis players, automobiles, what is playing, clarinet or what is playing? Musicians, Cousteau, boy in prison, jewelry, decorative things of this kind. Here I'm not paying attention whether they have anything to do with the pictures or not. Now sometime I will use these timepieces, which is about as close as I ever get to anything symbolic associative. I'm combining different factors. Sometimes it is indeed associative symbolic, but these are borderline cases. Sometimes it is indeed organizational resemblance and so on, but mostly it is about what feels like what. In another lecture I talk about the background of this project. Here I don't want to get off into more than I can handle. In this context, I'm trying to show what goes on with the looking. Now I may have to go through some of this again because I'm thinking too much about what I'm saying here, and when I'm working actually by myself, I'm much more concentrated. I'm trying to be sure that I click with any association that comes along.
39.
The world, the bridges of New York, a figure here and there that attracts me. These are from a variety of sources and magazines. some Oriental and African things. There's a face I'm going to use sometime. I don't know. I quite admit these are subjective things. Also, it is influenced by the fact I've been through this pile many times now, and this is my working pile. Assembled little by little. I first had 15, 20 pictures, and I'm going through magazines all the time, and I pick things out.
40.
I'll use that sometime. There's more Eskimo drawings. Now you see already from the things I've been laying out that I don't arrive right away at anything like an obvious association. Well, I don't know that there is in this case anything resembling an obvious association. What on earth would it be? I'm seeing here diagrams of physical things like energies and movements, which are in my mind associated also with emotional tensions and energies and movements and decisions and disappointments and things of this kind. And I look for all this too, some of which appears, I don't know, put that to side, what's in this pile is an enormous variety of reference, enormous variety of graphic forms, figurative, decorative arts, overviews of romantic cities in the Mediterranean, some tragic child from Africa, undernourished children, balloonists, supposedly high fashion sales, Chinese horses. This is here not for the whole thing, but for these two kids which I somehow like. Suggestions of this writing about future warfare and the kind of craft that may be used, and this has nothing to do with this. See?
41.
I did take 3 other drawings of faces, and I'll put them back just because I want to make the point, because why do I take and put aside these fellas on the left and not the ones in the center? See? Now, to me, without even thinking about it, the type of drawing, the type of expression, the type of energy, the way in which these particular individuals are represented is, in the one on the left, the 3 on the left, is related to the pictures we're going to do. Whereas there is something show business promotional, slightly facetious with these other fellas on the right there. But this I don't want. See, that's the why. This is the kind of consideration. I'm not as much in it as I wish I were, because I'm talking, and when I'm by myself, I'm able to concentrate better. Maps. Some fine day I'll use this kind of double, I guess you'd call it a caricature, although somehow it is merely caricature in drawing of Freud and what's his name, the head of the Rolling Stones. I wish I had more early things. If I had a lot of art magazines, I'd be happier. I would include things from 16th century. I occasionally put in some that I have. One panel has some medieval art in it, some has some early Mexican stuff. Here is a what is this? I guess this is the Victor Breuer that it's talking about. Browner is talking about. But is what's her name for Chanel selling perfume. This is a picture I'm going to for sure use sometime.
42,
It has the kind of qualities that I find useful in here, and I'm going to put aside, although I may not use this here at all. It is it's a advertisement for this Bal de Versailles perfume, and it is an actual masked ball group at the Versailles, which somebody has photographed quite attractively. Some of these I'm putting aside because I know I'm familiar with them, having been through this pile several times, and the things that I sort of know where I want to associate. Some white line groups of musicians. Here's a picture of meat yards I'm going to use sometime, I know. And another Eskimo thing, and actually that is
43,
snow, cold weather mask. But here it appears as an extraordinary guy.
44,
I'm intentionally going through this extensive variety here, really to demonstrate that
45,
I'm after an association with the range of the whole world. It isn't quite the whole world. There are limitations to my range of interest and to my reactions, but you see from the different things that I put out here that this is not in a limited pattern. I'm reaching anywhere I can reach. Mostly it is indeed into situations away from the abstraction in this magic calligraphy business, back into the real world, back into the conventional world. The conventional associations of people, of money,
46,
conventional symbols of things like elegance and disaster and war and peace and so on. But I'm trying to. This is an important stage of it, because I have not got a predetermined idea of what it is I'm after. This is where I get
47.
at where I'm after. Whether the Washington D.C. or in and out of sentiment and the whole legend of the West and current affairs and owls flying out of barns, Billy Martin and the Yankees and the nostalgia of the old mill, the air view of Manhattan, machinery, weather maps. This was in here just for a decorative detail, you know, and golly, I find it hard to look at these when I'm sounding off this kind of thing in terms of what I'm really looking for is the associations with these pictures. I go a little bit slower with the talk and a little more carefully with the pictures. I may have to go back. Theoretically, I'm putting aside things that I want to consider in more detail, but I strongly suspect I'm passing by things I want to consider. Now,
48.
you see this fashion ad. These figures. Now, what interests me here is the graphic element. If this were drawn a different way, I wouldn't pause over it at all. But I see some kind of analogy between, as it were, the pace, the speed, the time of this, including the writing that is down here. The arrangement, the scale of it, has something to do with the tempo. There is something about the way this model behind the drawing is walking. There's something to do with the field that is developing here. It is only developing. Well, this car has nothing to do with it. And these are most of these wonderful images, but nothing to
49.
For instance, you see, this is one I want to use somewhere because these things interest me, but this has nothing to do with it because the form, the static, the thing is quite contrary to any of the field that is developing here. All of these are things which have, for one reason or another, struck me. But no, I'm gradually feeling my way to what this. I put out just some pictures that I see related almost every time. For some strange
50.
reason, I guess it is strange, this appeals to me very greatly, and I want to find the right thing to that. It is maybe quite ordinary, semi-journalistic picture, and I'm not paying any attention to the accompanying text. There is something about the time quality, the anxiety quality of these three children that somehow gets to me. More of this later. Somebody being arrested, and there's a comic book figure called, I think, the Hulk.
51.
And I'll use him somewhere, but not here. See, although there is something muscular about this. This muscular business is going to come out somewhere. There's something anatomical about this. And I come to the question, is this pipe? Is this mechanical? Is organic? Is gutsy? See? This is what I'm getting at. It's a little of all of those things. It's not unthinkable that some comic book character would find a place here. I have quite a few things under the sea and quite a few up in the air here, but
52.
Let's see. This I will use eventually. I'm not sure. Is that Is that the Picasso or what? The accompanying article doesn't say what this is, but I'm going to use this. I'm going to use this fellow with his hand and his funny necktie. Well, all right. I don't want to get off into. It's an extraordinarily appealing picture in the kind of context that. Put that aside. That I use. It's a Japanese beer label that I like very much. I'm going to use sometime. And there are quite a few pictures from, I guess the right generic name is rock music performances of this type. I use this in and out of pseudo sentiments, and sometimes I put in here things that are for contrast, and there's not line there's a good deal of problem of scale. There's one I like very much, but the scale is wrong for most things.
53.
My pictures are smaller. One time I was going to do something with President Carter, but people concentrate so much on association, they think certainly if I use President Carter in this, that I'm getting political in some way, which I usually am not. I originally took those out because the drawing of President Carter's face looked like one of these magic calligraphies that I have. But I mustn't drag this out too far. Sometime I will use these stock market quotations, you know. Occasionally a classical thing, or now you see this which I'm going to use in some such context. This doesn't fit with this thing at all. You can see how it's a rather strong image. The folded angularity of this is going with another kind of there's the wound up spring after it is sprung. It's not the wound up spring. It is the open structure. And caricatures. Is that the traffic? More. I have a certain fondness for various kind of decorative objects used not on the table but in this type context. Because I'm fascinated with the use of representation, things like plant forms, of course, are so common, and the graphic ways in which these decorative elements are used in China and in furniture and so on. Bits of interiors from the in-group. I'm not really looking as I should for what I'm after here. I think now is
54.
What is common denominator of these pictures? Now I had something struck me, you see. There's a similar process goes on where I elect from my pile of prints to join these two in this enterprise, and they are already fairly disparate. Now, I have something in mind. Oh, whether it is in mind or not, I don't know. that's maybe too strong. There is something intuitive that I can make something out of the interrelation between these two prints of mind that are out here that you've seen so often. And I don't want to use anything careless. I don't want to use anything frivolous. I think these are both quite serious pictures somehow. I don't know. I wish I knew how others see this. Do you see this picture of the brilliantly lighted evergreen stripped branches here as frivolous? Do you see this as a light dancing situation, as a ballet of gaiety and release? I don't think I do. I think I see these both rather heavy. And let's see. This is just where it is explored.
55.
I often think of these, and this is what I refer to in the other part of this lecture that I have, that these are in the nature of states of mind, ways different people have of following the natural course of their habit, their set in reacting to almost everything that comes to their attention. I don't know. I'm going to put that aside though. Here's a small print list of numbers. Here's some big writing. Repeated typewriters just going down in the scale. One of those puzzle things.
56.
I don't think this has anything to do with it, but superficially, maybe it does. But I'm going to hold it off for a while. But that is, I'm going to put it aside for reconsideration. But even in this one that I described as heavy, there is a certain exuberance here. And many of these I take as somewhat in the nature of graphs of sound effects, as though they were a graphic representation not of words spoken, but of the impression of speech reaching you, where you don't pay too much attention to what is said, but you pay an awful lot of attention to the energy, to accent the stimulation, the excitement that is inherent in what is being said, or for that matter, shouted, or sung maybe. There's some relation here to, it seems to me, the sound effect of the space and the momentary, spontaneous, instantaneous exuberance that is going to, not over here, with not with those root things, with these branches. This position has nothing to do with it. We'll transpose them now. Put this over here. And let's see. I should really put aside anything where anything clicks at all.
57.
And I know that among other things I'm looking for chances to introduce typographical elements of one kind and another, because I'm interested in typography, and it's connotative, it's imaginary, things quite apart, and I think this is quite interesting typography in the graphic, in suggestive sense, and something clicks in my mind as I see it in this connection. It is something about the brilliant accents on the edges of these letters that makes them into a different kind of letter. It makes them into a different kind of word. There's a little bit like this, which takes these accents which are appearing on these branches, which makes them no longer branches on a tree, but makes nervous system. These are something of that kind. It's going to evolve what that is. It's got to stay being a tree. It's got to stay being they're not burned out. I think they are. I guess they are dead. The dead branches of I don't know what that is, as a fir or hemlock. I don't know. The branches, they are at any rate leafless in leaf season. These are evergreens. It has got to stay as the branches of this thick forest growth, illuminated in a spotlight beam of sun. But it becomes here, in all this context that we're dealing with, something else.
58.
Most likely, as this becomes something muscular, so this one becomes something maybe nervous, suggests to me. Yes, and you go off into these digressions. What do I know about nervous system or any other kind of anatomy? Nothing. But am I thinking of nervous system as something static, like a map, like a pattern, or do I mean by nervous system the thing that results from the nervous system, the kind of rapid, exceedingly, unbelievably rapid interconnection, interchange, the kind of thing the electronics people are talking about. Am I talking about the physiological computer? Maybe something of this kind. You see, some of these are show business type things. They're, as it were, in and out of reality. Sometimes the things that are really from outside of reality here in these pictures I am passing by become real. Sometimes the other way around, and the washing machine becomes extremely unreal object. And here and there, older pictures, interiors of bars, some photographic effects.
59.
But you see, a thing like this has nothing as which I will use sometime. This is quite inconsistent with this. Structurally, You can say this has its anatomical aspects. But not its sensory, not its anatomical aspects in any of the exciting ways that we are dealing with. This is not wholly mechanical. Very few of these things are. Well, this one is separated from the one I know I want to use it with. No, it does not. It's true. They have to go together, stay together. But sometime I'll make something wonderful out of that. Best faces, just as an aside, I don't know, I had President Carter here, but I don't know, President Carter doesn't fit into the scheme of things for all that he appears, everything you open as President Carter was. Mundale is much more useful in my context here. Things I'll use sometimes is light reflections on the roofs, on the dam. I use these two together sometimes. A little difficult to do, but to do. Kids in the bus. Chinese boat refugees, fashion ads, Spanish people, some kind of quite fantastic business about the opening of windows. Some faces that is there just for this architectural detail. This thing, you know, this
60.
is for these glasses. You can't always tell here from this page. This prehistoric art I want to use sometime. I will use this bison, it says it is. I thought the bison was an American version of this, and that this was the buffalo one. The thing out west was not the buffalo, but was a bison. This, well, I guess they know what they're talking about. I love mountains, but most of these things I'm dealing with now nothing to do with mountains. And the horse's skull and the takeoff of
61.
enormous mass of these marathon runners. There's something about these that is like running, you know.
62.
The massing, there's something more random about this than this is almost a formation. Those runners, they're almost equidistant. You would think somebody spotted them there. And,
63.
I'm so interested in all these things that just happen to grow in such a direction and to creep in such and such a way.
64.
Well, I don't know, I'll put that aside, you know. Strangely, that seems to me to have something, this character, this might be useful in this connection. Now, if I can find a way curiously enough, one of the strongest reactions I get here is this connection, this last one.
65.
Now, if I can find a way
66.
to elaborate and spell out this idea, this is almost for the first time, I'm getting to a change of pace now. I'm beginning to formulate something. And what I'm hunting for is not an agreement. It's the raw material for making up a composite picture of some interest. Okay? I'm looking for a working point, a thesis on which I want to develop. And of all the things that I looked at so far,
67,
I get the most reaction so far from these two. Not as a correspondence, but as a satisfactory long shot, as an unlikely, implausible, illogical, unexpected thing, out of which I may be able to make something which somebody might consider to be creative. This is, I have more reaction from this. My imagination is working a little sharper at this moment than it has been. Now, I have more, nearly something I want to try to work on, more baseline, something of this kind. Now let's see, I'm going to hold that just like that. Actually, I'm almost at the end of this pile. I am trying to get an interesting collection of pictures, an unexpected collection of pictures, and possibly a creative set of pictures, where the interest is really in the feeling of, toward some kind of unexpected but yet a defensible thing that will finally come back home. If it doesn't come back home, it's no good. I don't say it has to come back home to everybody. But no, I don't think it's fair to say it must only come back to me. You have to try and see. That has nothing to do
68.
with it. That has nothing to do with it. That has nothing to do with it. When I say it has nothing to do with it, I mean it doesn't feel right. Now I go back sometime, never mind this the sunbather here.
69,
You see, what this is in here for is this dunes business up here. It has nothing to do with this. I put it in here to show that what I'm fishing for is to point out the feeling of why I sense the kind of movement. Let's go
70.
Let's go back to these runners again. Now there is something about the way that I imagine they are all moving at about the same pace actually, but their pace is inhibited by the crowding and is greatly influenced by the perspective of the face. That because of this perspective you don't see any movement back here, you see a great deal of movement up front.
71,
And here I don't have very much perspective in this. And here I don't have much perspective. You see this in this calligraphic consideration, the actual material is got quite a good deal of depth, and yet it is not exactly three-dimensional. Yeah, all right. I usually am after some, in these instances at any rate, the idea is that the detail before me, I should say, by the way, that I intend to probably crop this off like this. Or something like this. Now, that I can see this actually in-depth, three-dimensional, textural and light-modulated subject to be a piece of paper, plain, on which there is this event, this occurrence, this magic of somebody has been writing all over it in some language that I don't know. Who is
72,
expressing to me what it has to say, not only by the what, more or less irrelevant to calligraphy, is the correspondence between the what and the power of the drawing, the power of the spontaneous stroke. As you see in a good many examples I have in the other form of presentation, which goes into some detail about nature of calligraphy and its forms of graphic energy. These are found calligraphic analogies. Now,
73,
you see what is promising here is promising, I don't know, we got to work this out yet, is that I have two quite different kinds of energy, which we talked about a while ago as being one muscular, one nervous. And now I want to see how I'm going to make this into some kind of suggestive unit. Suggestive unit, I mean I am simply taking components and putting them together. I mean, this picture of the races has, after all, a great many components. There's a street, all the individuals, and now it's pretty normal that at about this point I begin to get a working idea. Well, at least enough of a thing I begin to see more clearly what it is I'm trying to do, what it is I'm working on.
74,
Now, that is to say, I have two different types of energy event, and I now come to the conclusion that these are physiological energies. I rather like the
75.
subject that one is muscular. No, it is not muscular, it is some driftwood, that is what it is. And that this is nervous. No, it is not nervous, it is some dead evergreen branches. But the graphic of it, the way that these things end up here out at the edge, the way where they are overlapping, I rather like this idea of muscular nervous. Now always in these things I'm coming up against something big field that I don't know anything about, and I don't know any physiology, and I wish some of my physician friends were here. We could have interesting dinner conversation about this, and I don't remember now, is a book or a movie or something about what was it, the long distance runner, something or other. What it was, there is something not only graphic, and here this is an important point. I am looking for something which has the desired content, both graphically and referentially. See?
76,
I'm now more or less resolved to keep this picture of the marathon runners. Okay? No, I don't commit myself. I may take this out, but here I'm beginning to see how to make something out of this. And I think you'll admit this is something unexpected. Certainly I didn't have anything of the kind about masked runners in this when I started out. This I developed, and as I look at it, I see more and more fragmented thing here. I don't see the whole. This has a suggestion of more and more on behind it.
77.
There's something I like about this picture because it picks out certain 30 or 40 individuals here that you see in the foreground, and then they gradually dissolve and merge into an enormous, anonymous, unidentifiable mass where exist merely pinpoints. And I can look at this picture the same way, that if I care to give it attention, I become sort of conscious of certain general masses here of these branch forms, and yet I have not seen the half of it in the individual lines. There's something of this kind in here that I like. And there is something that corresponds to me with this in its motion and the foreground part of the runner's picture in its motion. Now let's see how we're going to develop this theme. That this is something about the combination of nervous energy and muscular energy in such a kind of effort under a strong element of mass psychology, you could call almost mass hysteria here. This is the kind of thing I like to work out. Obviously, if I'm trying to do something about forestry or something about, I don't know what academic area this fits in, I suspect none if it has to do with anything. I suppose it is cleaning up our rivers. If I were trying to do something nice and clear about that, I wouldn't get into Boston Marathon.
78.
I'm trying to go in some other area determined to write suggestive thing. Now I want to go back to see how some of these other things fit. Now here is this Egyptian hen that I put aside, but it doesn't ring quite that much bell yet. I don't know. I don't. There is something there that appeals to me. Chiefly, I think about the scale. I need something, I sense, with that corresponds to the differences in scale that I'm dealing with here. That is not wholly a matter of graphics or appearances. This is a matter of how you avoid a conflict of interest and conflict of attention that sometimes does a great deal of harm. You have to bring this thing into some kind of scale harmony.
79.
Now, there is something about this space that relates in here, but it doesn't come quite clear to me yet. There is something about the actual expression that is like what is going on over here. I believe that you can take things like a telephone conversation, a waking up in the morning, a letter, a facial expression, and reduce this somehow to graphic forms of lines of a certain character interacting in triangles and forms that break and dissipate. And to me there is something analogous here. And it has something to do with this texture here. This peeling, eroded surface. And all right, you can specify this peeling, eroded surface, but it is the general erodedness of the two. I try to be far-fetched. If I were trying to do something simple and ordinary, I wouldn't do it this way. I would do something that was very obvious, you would see, you would identify, and probably forget it. You know? But I somehow don't think so. And then I'm going back over the same ground, and no, I'm going to keep always these runners until I explore this. Now I don't think this has
80.
anything to do with the theme that I'm trying to work out now. What I'm after now is some other things that kick off a similar reaction to what I get with the formulation of this, part with the runners. I think the trouble here is it's too powerful, and it's got to be somehow better than this, or it becomes a little ridiculous. I don't think so. It is not really a powerful picture. I wonder what this commercial artist ordinarily does. It is not really a powerful picture. It is overdone, that's what. Now, I'm just going back now over the pictures that I put aside, and it very often works. This is pretty much the pattern in which I work and which I'm trying to illustrate here. That by going through that path, putting aside 15, 20 pictures, going back, it works out. Now, I don't think so, because unless I want to depart from the theme that I suggested about this, when I talk about muscular and nervous energy, I am really not referring to the experience of a long-distance runner. I'm talking about everybody. I'm talking about
81.
the relation of muscular and nervous energy in life in general. I may get something a little more specific than that, but I'm using this as an illustration of something else. I'm not going back to something about Boston Marathon race. I'm going back to something about the phenomena of apparently contradictory, apparently disparate parts of our makeup which are challenged and somehow must come to interact, as the muscles and the will and the nervous coordination of the runner must coordinate. I don't mean symbolically. I am thinking of how to make some kind of a unit out of this. Now, I have this fella put aside here, but I don't think this is it either. This does not form that kind of a sequence. For some curious reason, and golly, I don't know whether I can clarify this or not, this is more appropriate. Now, this has something to do with running and have run, with emotional energy expended or latent and expended for some reason, and I wouldn't want to defend this in court, there is something structurally about this that seems to me to correspond to this. The way that these odd bits of wood are interrelated and one coming out of the other are like the ways in which these figures and their objects which they hold, school books or whatever, are held. Not that these are like personalities, but there is something in the tempo. So I'm going to put this aside in a special possibility. Now, this is fairly far out. It is maybe too far out. I would have too much trouble to say why this seems alike. But I don't know whether I could persuade, by putting pictures like this out, anybody to sense anything the same way that I do of an enormous energy suddenly come to rest. And let's put this the other way around for a moment. Now, do you see how this changes it? That I keep thinking back here to a piece of machinery, something like the driving mechanism of the side of locomotive. The energy has been and has now stopped, retaining its circumstantial energy. There are a lot of wonderful pictures are like this. This is a quality I must remember this to look for in a lot of pictures, where the energy is not then taking place; it has taken place. Now, in the conventional, in conventional cliche, after the expenditure of energy, what do? You collapse into an easy chair, drop your hands on either side, put your feet out straight, and lean back in the classical gesture of utter exhaustion, and that's not quite what I mean. I'm talking of the stopping of a physical movement while the mind is going at a tremendous pace again. Now, this has something to do with the direction of the faces. No? Well, this picture is not unique. There are thousands of pictures like this, but it's a particularly good example. Probably why the ad agency took it for this purpose. They may have seen very much the same thing I do, but I don't know. It strikes me as a very extraordinary picture. It could be true, it could miss altogether. It's a uniformity of preoccupation, these faces, that is other directed, not at the camera, but at some of the circumstances of this tension. It's a highly emotional picture, I think. It has some possibilities, but let's explore. I have some notion about this, but I would say what I had in mind has been completely supplanted by the business about the marathon run, which still sticks. This is holding up well.
84.
No, I don't see that this has any. I don't see that this is getting anywhere. It does. I could argue for it, but putting these aside, I was at no point arguing for this as a unit. These were possible components of the kind of units we are setting up. that now this has nothing to do with it. Okay? The feel of it doesn't. This esoteric now. I'm back into. I'm back into something. Very everyday, quite dramatic. I want to put these
85.
pictures back the other way. This is I'm quite sure. Well, at least I want these two together. No, I simply put this out as there's a. It's the face as such that interested me here. But I'm working on something else now.
86.
And I was talking about this, but I don't think this has anything to do with what I'm working on now. And I thought this face might work, you know. But well, something not wholly convincing here with this face. I think that picture of those kids that I had a moment ago, I think that is not photographer induced. Yeah, he probably put them there, and he may have told them which direction to look. But I don't think he actually directed the effect which he finally got. Here, I think this is photographer induced. I think it's straight studio. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. But no.
87.
This, of course, is not induced by anything. This is a real McCoy. But it doesn't serve. It doesn't serve my purposes really.
88.
I think. I don't know. Go back. Now here is this one that I said haunted me, you know. But I don't think it serves my purpose, you know. This is about something else. It is not about visceral, muscular, and nervous energy. I'm willing to drop this muscular nervous energy business at any point, but I would drop it because I run into something. You know, I run into something else. This rather unexpectedly seems to me to come back into being here.
89.
I don't know what that strange building is. Somebody has. I take it that is an actual building and not a temporary set, but it may be some exhibition thing, some exposition or something. I guess so. That is a temporary dingus. But there is certainly a certain structural formal analogy here with those torn up root forms. No, this is too artsy. This too contrived. That's staging.
90.
No, I don't want to go into this. No, I had quite a bit to say this before. But the trouble is that the horse does not run the way these things mechanize. That's the trouble with this. The horse runs a different way. It runs like a piston engine. A horse does not run like type function at all. And this has no feeling of openness as this has. It is a different legend. No. This was related to this flame business over here. I've now, not irrevocably, but I'm now working on a different aspect of this flame thing. And I thought this had something to do with this. And I'm not reading just what this is. It is one of the civil rights issues business, so-called Wilmington 10.
91.
I'm pausing over it. Does not strike me this has nothing to do with it. I was talking about diagrammatic effects from a letter, conversation, a meeting. The issue to make. What is the shape of an issue? Where it is clear to both parties what is right, what is wrong, but not necessarily clear to the other party. You got the kinds of pulling and structuring. The trouble is that that is not such a wonderful picture, really. It is in one sense, but I like the individual characterization.
92.
Oh, I want to see if I can tell why I think this still has something to do with it. It has something to do with the way this group of people is organized within the picture here. I don't mean positionally, geometrically, obviously not, but there is something about the intervals, the range of there's a white woman, I think. There is something about the cohesion of the parts with the quite extraordinary changes of individual characterization that is going on here, that is similar to the types changes that are going on here. Now, I suppose this would take dynamite to clarify, and in the end, nobody would agree with me. But I'm very sensitive to what are the degrees of change and the orchestration of bringing them together. I might find the same thing in another picture, but as I was going through there, somehow this struck me. That there are, if you take these pieces of wood and take them up, untangle them from the pile that they are in now, consider their individual characters and arrange them in a group as though it was a group portrait like this. And this portrait, see, I'm making certain concessions. This portrait could not very well under the circumstances be otherwise. But I think you can make this picture into this one, and you can take these people, take them out of the formality of this group that they're in, mix them up, and you would end up with something like this. I'm off on awfully thin ice, but there is something about the way that their hands are and the way the spaces between the individuals are, the differences of their various hairdos and things, that the rhythmic changes. And what this adds up to, that the temper of the thing. This again has this arrested business. You see, here, look at these guys. Sitting here at the table and lined up behind the table. It's not the monument, they're in the middle of a issue. The people's blood is boiling. I don't know the story here, and I haven't been reading about this. I heard about this, but I don't have clearly in mind what it's all about. But I think this is hot. I don't think it's a passive thing at all. Look at this guy. This guy is dynamite. And the temper of it seems to be alive.
93.
I think these go back in the general pile, and we see if we can make anything out of this. I still like this thing. This sticks. This doesn't come apart. Now, what is the thing that really makes this up? Have I got the case? Let's take this out for the time being. I made quite the case for this, but I think I'll take it out now. I like what is running through my mind, although I have a feeling I've not been really able to clarify it. That I can make a case out of this. Do you see here? I don't know that the arrangement you see now is what I want. That's another consideration. But what's going on is that I see an awful lot more in all these pictures than I did to begin with. I didn't bypass them. I saw something when I originally put them in that pile of working material. And interestingly enough, that one that I put aside first, those hands there, stuck. But it was never intended as anything more than a sort of grace note, a footnote. And there it stands.
94.
Had some other development taken place, it would have been thrown out. That big knife comes out. I'm only interested in those hands. This will come out. You see, this way. But now I don't know, particularly here now.
95.
This picture has gone up in my estimation enormously, just as I have been considering it, looking at it carefully, talking about it, and particularly because I've got something to use it for. Now, this is strange, because here's a kind of thing that I see. This is not some group at an ordinary meeting. I wish I knew to what extent I was influenced, I didn't read the article that goes with this, by just headlines here, but I know that this is a tense situation. here represented in the semblance of a formal portrait. And this is an extent in itself circumstantially and photographically extraordinary. Now, all right, here, you have got also here an apparently very ordinary scrap pile type situation, which graphically, however, is dynamically very strong. This is not really a wonderful news picture. All right, the fellow was on the ball to get there at all, to be there at the right time, and to get really as telling a picture of this particular phase of it as he did. Okay, lots of credit. Nobody is going to give this a prize as a textural thing, as a great many photographers have done so well, where they were interested not in the kind of thing that I'm interested in here of its associative powers, but interested in it as nature, as something rather related to wildflowers. Now, this is not quite what I'm getting at, because I don't really care whether those are roots or not, but I do care about these angles at which this root turns. This looks something like, you see cobra snake, you see that head sticking up there, and how these alternating tortured and background Pacific forms, and these strong curves and this business. This I'm interested in. Now, this could just as well be some other kind of material, some building materials, some, for that matter, some lights, or anything that as readily as this translated itself into human circumstances, I think, of the more I look at it, the more I'm convinced that this passivity is something like this passivity. Now, here is a momentary passivity, actually highly explosive, highly emotional. Photographically rendered rather by the ringing the various changes. See, I don't know what this clothing this fellow on the left foreground has here. This is clerical, is it not? Is he a priest in some of these black organizations? I think something of the sort. It is the ringing of these various changes set from here to here to here to here in the foreground. There's something about the alternation of lights and darks that is a good correspondence. Somewhere in here they have achieved a similar tension, where another group of some passive committee, some house committee, some business meeting, some group of this kind, would have nothing of the kind. Another pile of ordinary leavings. What this is actually is some partial clearance, cleaning up a little bit along a riverbank. has been, and somebody gathered up some of this stuff into a pile. Some of that is grown, some of it placed there. I don't think it's a wonderful picture at all. It was a suggestive picture, that's what it is. Because of the way that it is interwoven, I would point to the particular areas of light, their form, not exactly for their beauty, but for their indication, a graphic structure of some kind of a situation, which is something like this, that has got legal elements in it. I know perfectly well from this picture there's a very tense situation.
96,
So, now, how about what is, if anything, a little still in the back of my mind is, would I be better off with a more dynamic picture than this? I think I'll leave the dynamics over here.
97,
Now, on the face of it, this is not a particularly dynamic picture. I am just making it into a dynamic picture. I am laying things on here, of course. That's a part to it. That there have pictures on which you can lay things, about which you can make exactly some exercises I am going into. That's just the point. Otherwise, a pile of scrap leavings on the riverbank is nothing. And here I can flip the page, and this is something going on a long way away that I don't have anything to do with, and therefore it's nothing. You know what the most careful, formal, considered picture in here is that advertisement of
98.
those hands there. That's the most really most purposeful of the pictures here. But I think I will settle for this. Now let's see, how would this arrangement really work out? Sometimes I leave the actual arrangement until I've got them cropped. Well, one thing I consider with this is whether to put the two original pictures together and the others in a grouping out here at the side as notes, whether to put them into pairs, like here is one pair and here is another pair of some kind, like two groupings like this, or whether to run this thing as a left to right. Ordinarily it goes left to right and back again and back and forth. Like this, if it's not the left to right sequence. Then I have to weigh sometimes these two in the middle, and these, but I don't think so. It seems to me the way my thinking has been going, this starts off as a found calligraphy. And I'm now arguing that this is a complementary calligraphic which elaborates and correlates in an interesting way. I'll stick to this. My intuition of the strong feeling for this was, I think, supportable. Now, after I get these pasted up, then I look at them, well, every day, sometimes for a long time, just seeing whether they hold up. And we'll see. But I have to first see whether it is holding up well enough to...
99.
Now, another thing is, I think this is a pair that goes off here. and this is another 3 that goes here, you see? But that doesn't go up top. Now, mind you, this is going to get trimmed small. Now, does this work out one above the other? This is sometimes desirable, that you shift from horizontal. No, it doesn't look right.
100,
But maybe this does. What about? Well, I think this is the right sequence. The actual placement depends on some other factors that will work out when I get them actually cropped and ready to mount. I usually associate these things by some internal element and not by the outer dimensions of the thing. I try to see. Now you see here some movements, and then this goes up here, and where within each picture there is usually a kind of figure within the ground. Now you see here light, it is light, and it is going off here like this. There is a shape, something like this, simply formed by the more prominent highlights here. Somehow this, which is the most prominent highlight of all, doesn't really count so much. It is this that counts, the alignment here through here. Now what is the shape of this? It goes up here and over there. And I tried to get this into the right balance. This figure with this figure, they are quite disparate, but I can adjust that. And then I have to see that the whole thing balances. Then this has to figure where this goes right and left. Now that I want, that hook thing there,